All right, I'm joined today by Mallika Bender, DE&I staff actuary at the Casualty Actuarial Society. Mallika, for our last segment here, I want to delve into leadership. This is, partly why we set up this interview series was to really get different perspectives from people within the profession about leadership. And I'm really interested in your thoughts here, especially as it relates to inclusive leadership. That's a term that I think has been thrown out there more over the last 2 years, probably than we saw before. So what does inclusive leadership mean to you, and what does it look like?
I think that inclusive leadership is first just about listening, right? So creating a lot of different ways to listen, because a lot of people may say that they don't feel heard in their company, or they don't feel safe to say what they're thinking or feeling, which means that, maybe the spaces where, that already exist to allow people to share those things don't really work for everyone. So creating different avenues to allow people to speak, making space for other people to talk in meetings, maybe directly asking people, what they're thinking or feeling, and stepping back so that other people can step forward, to me is the start, right, of inclusive leadership. But then it's not just listening, it's also about taking action when you hear that something maybe isn't working. And I guess that comes back to what I was saying before about power, that we as leaders, we're the owners of a lot of policies and practices in our teams, or the work that we're doing. And we do have the power, right, to say, oh, something in this system or this process, whether it's an HR style process or, the way your team works or the actual work product, something in this process isn't working for everyone. And maybe there is a way to change that. So taking action and how you behave after you hear from all of these different people is really important. If you're listening and, people know that they're able to say what they need to say, but nothing ever comes of it, then again, we're not going to reach the end goal, like I was saying before.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I think it's something we all struggle with, right? How do you create that right environment for everybody? Not just even minority groups, but people that maybe have different opinions from the mainstream. Like, how do they get their voices heard in a way that's productive for them as individuals and for a company as a whole, right?
Right. And I think you can also tap into the lower level leaders, in your groups to help you with that listening. You may never be a safe person for me to talk to, right? If I'm at a certain level and you're at a certain level, I may never feel comfortable sharing what I really need to say with you, but I probably am comfortable sharing it with my colleague, or maybe somebody who's one step up from me, who's not a manager. So there has to be ways that people can feel safe to say what they need to say, that eventually, hopefully gets to you and allows you to make some change. So it does kind of require you to be creative, I think, and to be really observant about what is happening in the other ranks, right? And understand that you may be like, I have an open door policy, please come talk to me. And you may never still be perceived as the safe person to talk to, right? So you have to tap into the network.
Yeah, no, those are very good points. Very fair too. In thinking about people that you've observed or interacted with over the course of your career that you consider to be successful leaders, what traits do they have? How did they demonstrate their leadership? What have you seen that's had an effect on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the people that have had the profoundest effect on me have been teachers in their roles, and not my teachers, but my managers who took the time to sit down and really guide me through what I was doing. It's not just that they were smart or they had influence, but also that they were willing to share their secrets with me, and to acknowledge also that what I did was, right for the amount of knowledge that I had, right? But here's something extra that you didn't know. And this is what I think about when I'm doing this work. And that just kind of continues to build you up as an employee and allow you to then take those same steps. So I feel like in my actuarial career, I grew up under managers and directors that were teachers and really had that culture of sharing that knowledge and building up the people below them. And I try to take that right into my leadership style as well, of this is how I would think of this. You know, what you did was valid for what you saw and perceived. Here's something else that I perceived that might add to your knowledge. And I think the other thing that I've really appreciated from some of my best leaders is that they were human. You know, like they need to take breaks sometimes, or they have lives outside of work, and they actually model that for us. You know, they sometimes they look exhausted, or sometimes they unplug, or they tell me that I'm allowed to unplug, right? And they do other things so that you know that it's okay to do other things as well and have a life outside of work. So I've really valued those traits in a lot of my leaders.
Well, I love what you said there too, because when you model that behavior, right, whether it's the human element or it's the trying to teach somebody to help bring them up, build their knowledge base, that really can lead to what you started with on inclusive leadership. I mean, people that behave that way are going to be perceived as more approachable, right? Because they are human and because they do care, right? And I think that's what comes across when, because I've experienced that as well with colleagues and mentors and managers, that there's a big difference between those that care and those that don't, in terms of their behaviors and how they interact. That makes them a lot more approachable from a leadership standpoint.
Right, exactly. And it makes it easier to, I think, to get the best out of the people that work for you, because you peel away those layers of resistance. You acknowledge that, you know, they have lives too, and that you want them to be successful in all of the different aspects of their lives. And that just makes people happier, right? And that makes them want to come to work. And that takes away some of these like layers of stress that can prevent us from being really productive when we're at work. So I think that it just creates people who are more able to produce, more able to think creatively, because they are free from some of those other stressors to a certain extent.
Yeah, fair enough. So when you think about some of your role models that you've had when it comes to leadership, how have you tried to emulate their examples in your day-to-day work?
So I mean, I think I already talked about that idea of being a teacher or a coach, right? And always trying to work with people, meet them where they are, and then add something, right? And say, this is how I would think of it. And I found that, like I said, really valuable to have people like that who are willing to sit down with me, look at what I did, walk through it with me, and then say, well, here's another thing to think about. And I would say I've had great teachers and great managers that I looked up to at every company that I've worked for. So I'm not going to name anyone in particular, otherwise I would definitely miss someone. But some of the other leaders that I really look up to, what I think that they did for me was they saw my strengths too, and continued to give me opportunities to build on those strengths, and acted as a champion for me, right, in those situations. So they said, I know that you have X, Y, and Z strengths, something you're good at. Like I used to love doing programming in SAS. So I got a lot of opportunities to continue to work on data automation, process automation projects, and be able to build that skill, because that's something I wanted to do and I was interested in. And my leaders, the ones that I think I really look up to, saw that and said, well, you're interested in this. Here's this slightly different project, which sort of utilizes some of those skills and will allow you to grow. And I think that is, one of the main reasons that I've been successful is because I've been given those opportunities. And now what I'm really valuing in my leaders is people who treat me as a partner and as an equal, while at the same time sort of acting as that next layer of review, or providing their advice or their guidance when I need it, but also acknowledging that they are learning something from me too, right? So that really makes me feel like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not an imposter, and that I have something valuable to say, and I can keep learning and growing in my skills at the same time. So I think there are a lot of different traits in leaders that I've looked up to, but it's all just about acknowledging the people that are working for you, getting to know them, and then helping them capitalize, I think, on their strengths.
No, that's great. And just one last question on this topic before we wrap. So what do you view as the imperatives for future successful leaders within the actuarial profession? People that want to become leaders, like what are the things that they need to learn, to know how to do, to actually be able to be successful?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier this idea that there are leaders below you, right, that you want to acknowledge. And I think it's important for future leaders to recognize that they're already leaders in some capacity, and there's always going to be someone that can learn from them, even if you are an entry-level person, right? If there is an intern or somebody who just joined a month after you, there are ways that you can coach them and just share your experience or help ease the path for them, which builds up those skills, right? The listening and understanding what people, what challenges they have, and starting to identify, the skills and the strengths that people have. So I think that even the lowest level employees have some amount of influence, and it's just about recognizing that, right, and starting to use it in the spaces that you're in, and with the people that would benefit from it. So I think that that's part of it, right? It's just recognizing that you have something to share right now, even if you're not leading a team. And then I hope, from a DEI perspective, right, that we don't confuse our search for high potential people with stacked resumes that look perfect, right? I think don't abandon the idea of developing employees on the job. And that kind of goes along with what I was saying, right? About you're a leader at any level that you're at, and you can always help somebody else develop and learn and grow and ease their path. I think it's getting a little bit too easy to just hire people who on paper have all the skills that you think you need in a role. And it's getting harder for people to find jobs where they can actually develop and learn without getting left behind. And I think that's one of the things that's holding us back on our journey towards a more diverse profession. And I know that people who knew nothing about the profession, besides what they read in a 2-paragraph section of a Careers for Math Majors book, can be successful if they have all those people to develop them. But we have this sort of systemic nature of the processes that we work with, and the way that we work, and bias comes in, right? So we move towards a world where more entry-level people come to us checking all those boxes, and we're less likely to take a risk on other people who we might have to pour more effort into to develop. So I hope that, future leaders are thinking about that. It's like, how can I develop, who can I help to grow, as opposed to like, who already has the skills that I need to get this job done.
Yeah, that's not an easy task for sure. And I think you're right, especially in our profession, where from an entry-level standpoint, it's exams and internships that really help a candidate stand out on paper. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the best candidate. And that somebody else that maybe doesn't have as impressive as a resume can't be super successful in the profession as well. So do you have any advice for people that are in that situation, that they're trying to have to figure out, how do I balance the what looks good on paper versus what am I trying to achieve as a company?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I think it's a little bit fuzzy. My first answer will be a little bit fuzzy, which is to check our biases, right? And think about, what do I look for on paper and what does that really translate into in real life? And then start to think about other things that you don't need to see on the piece of paper that could answer the same questions. So I think that those, phone screens and actual face-to-face interviews can help you get at some of those qualities that maybe just reviewing a resume and cutting a bunch of people won't help you get to. It is more work though. We're all getting flooded. There's always going to be more entry-level candidates than you can hire, right? So you have to be willing to take a closer look at the ones that don't check all of the boxes and maybe ask the right questions to see what they say. And I think just to also prioritize that diversity of thought, like maybe we want a few people in our candidate pool who don't know about the actuarial profession or the insurance industry, who come from a different background, like an economics degree or a finance degree, who can apply some different, a different lens to the work that we're doing and can learn on the job. So I think that there are, different ways that we can think about our hiring process and think about our priorities and balance it. That doesn't mean you disregard all of the great resumes and the people who are highly prepared, but do try and balance it out and say, we do want that. And we also want some people who maybe have a different level of highly prepared or a different version of that. And we want to make sure that we have the mix of both.
Yeah, no, very good advice. I appreciate that. Mallika, I want to thank you for joining me today on our interview series. For people that want to follow what you're doing, where should they go? Where should they look?
So personally, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to share what we're doing at the CAS and also other things that I know are going on or that I'm excited about on my LinkedIn profile. The CAS website, casact.org, also has a DEI page. So you can get to, all of the articles, the magazine articles and the blog posts that we publish that our members and community write related to diversity and inclusion. You can find the research that we're doing. And you can see some examples of the initiatives that we have ongoing on that website. We also feature some videos on there so people can get a little continuing education or just learn in bite-sized mini trainings. And then of course you can follow the CAS on social media. We try to really amplify what our partner organizations are doing and what we're doing so that the community can stay involved. And if people want to reach out directly, they can email me at diversity@casact.org. So I'm always excited to talk to members or other actuaries or candidates and just hear what they're thinking, what they're experiencing, share ideas and share best practices that way and help people get involved if they want to.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mallika. And just want, in closing here, the leadership development community of the CCA is open to any actuary. If you're interested in joining, feel free to reach out to the CCA to join. And want to give a few other shout outs. Thanks to Shannon Peterson of CCA staff for helping to organize today's event, and to the Leadership Development Steering Committee for helping with this interview. Join us for upcoming CCA events and follow us online as well on social media and on our website. And until next time, thanks again, Mallika, and thanks for everyone for joining us.
Thanks again for having me. It was a great conversation.
Thank you.